This Week in Radio Tech, episode 158, is brought to you by the Omnia One Multicast, Omnia's new second-generation audio processor for coded audio, featuring the exclusive Census audio conditioning technology. On the web at omniaaudio.com.
And now, our feature presentation.
Twert.
New car buyers could be saying, "Where's my radio?" in a couple of years. Should broadcasters worry? Well, should they?
All right, calm down. He says that to everyone.
This calls for immediate discussion.
What's up, Tarr?
All your days are belong to us.
From his palatial office of important business,
or in a choice hotel in a distant land,
this is Kirk Harnack.
The Twert panel of experts disagrees about the demise of traditional radio. So where do you stand?
You're dialed in to This Week in Radio Tech.
Hey, welcome into This Week in Radio Tech. I'm Kirk Harnack, your host. I'm glad to be here. This is the show where we talk about radio technology. And on this episode, we're talking about how that technology may be changing a lot. And people have expected some change as we go along, but I don't know. I've run across information this week that just leads me to believe that it really is going to be changing. And we may not recognize the radio business as we know it today in 4 years, 10 years, 15 years. That's easy to say, though. That's a long ways off. Welcome into the show. Our show is brought to you by the Omnia One audio processor, available in FM, AM, and Internet versions. Our co-hosts on the show, our usual co-hosts, and they're all here. The whole family is here. It feels like a reunion. First, let's welcome in our long-lost prodigal son, the guy who hasn't been here in a while, from Hudson Valley, New York. It is Tom Ray. Hey, Tom, welcome back.
Hey, thanks, Kirk. Good to be back, and actually in a good mood. So I'm doing good.
Well, glad you're here. Tell us, give us the short version of what you're doing right now and what we should know about that.
Oh, well, I am no longer with WOR Radio full-time. I am on my own, a company called Tom Ray Broadcast Consulting, and I'm doing various things. My big contract right now is with the New York State Broadcasters Association, where I'll be heading up EAS for the state of New York, and also heading up the Alternative Broadcast Inspection Program. So I get to go out and make people's lives miserable by inspecting broadcast stations.
You'll fix EAS, and then you'll go and inspect stations.
Well, there you go. See, but the nice thing about the ABIP is once your station passes, you get a 3-year pass from routine FCC inspections, and we don't go in actually looking to make sure you fail. We go in if we find something, you have the chance to fix it before the commission walks in the door. So that's what's really cool about it. I've got several other things I'm doing. One thing is the Car Doctor radio program, which airs on Saturdays, and I've got a couple of stations I do some contracting for, and I've got an FCC filing I'm working on right now, so I'm a busy boy.
Cool. Thanks for joining us. I'm glad you're back. Really glad you're back, because I know you'll have some contribution to this show. Also with us from Mukwonago, Wisconsin, the Geek Jedi himself. Hoo-yah! It's Chris Tarr.
Hello there. I am, let's see here, Director of Engineering for 88.9 Radio Milwaukee, contributing writer to Radio Guide Magazine. I'm a contract engineer, still doing work for Intercom in Milwaukee and Madison. Let's see what else. I also co-founded the Virtual Engineer at broadcastengineering.info, so all over the place.
Cool. Awesome. Glad you're here. Thank you for making the trip to the bedroom to join us. Inviting us into
it was a long walk, you know.
just think, every person watching or enjoying this show gets to is invited into Chris's bedroom. That's just awesome. And the best dressed engineer in radio is with us again. He's almost never not here. He's almost always here, I suppose. It's Chris Tobin from Manhattan, New York. Chris, welcome in.
Well, welcome. Thank you. I'm with the folks at CCS Musicam. We do IP audio and video, and I also on the side have some projects like Tom and Chris doing some consultation with radio stations, so I keep my broadcast fingers nimble and having a good time doing it. And congratulations, Tom, on your move. It's a lot of work and a lot of fun, but now you decide and you make lasting decisions, so it's good. And those self-inspections I've done, those are they're actually fun. You do it right.
Oh, yeah, they're a blast. Matter of fact, I've got a station on Monday. It's very interesting on the AM site. They have an above an elevated ground system, and they've done a mom-proof. So
Nice.
that should be a lot of fun to inspect.
A mom-proof. Boy, that sounds interesting. I think I know what you mean. Tell us what a
Moments of
mom-proof
measurement.
is. Yes.
It's a moment of methods proof of performance on the antenna system. The old method of going out and doing a proof is you went out on, I don't know, at least 8 radials or more, depending on how many nulls you had and how many protections. And you started out literally, I don't know, about 1/10 of a mile from the transmitter. And you did non-directional readings out to 20 miles, and then you went out you went directional, and you went out on all the radials and redid all the points from 2 miles on out. And every so often, you'd have to go out and run a radial or run all the radials, which was very time-consuming. With a moment of method.
No, wait. You're saying that you don't have to do that anymore? You mean I can really do an AM proof of performance from the back seat or the front seat of my convertible?
Actually, you could probably do it from your living room, but there's actually a little more to it than that. It's what a mom proof is. You computer model the antenna system, and it tells you that for certain if you disconnected, if it's a 3-tower system, if you disconnected towers 1 and 2, tower 3 should measure this impedance. And what you actually do is you go out and you electrically measure the length of the sample lines to make sure they're within specification. You go out and you actually measure the impedance at the bottom of the tower, or towers actually for all the towers in the array, and you see if they compare to the computers. What the computer said they should be, and if they do. You can set it up you can set the antenna parameters up, the operating parameters up according to the computer model, and be reasonably assured that the pattern is going to be where it belongs. And there are also, let's see, if you have 3 monitored radials, then you would have at least 9, possibly 12 points where you go out and you just do 3 points. You don't do the non-directional and directional, and they're just for reference. In case something happens, you can go out and you can just say, okay, the signal level used to be this, what is it now? And what that does is that eliminates a lot of environmental factors where, many times if you have all of a sudden power lines show up someplace, if you have a new bridge show up someplace that's a lot beefier than the one that's there, that could affect the readings. It actually does not affect the entire radial, so the actual radiation from the antenna system, but in the area of that structure, you're going to get re-radiation. You're going to get probably higher readings, if not lower readings, but most likely higher readings. And, that becomes a pain when you have to go out and do what are called monitoring points to satisfy the license, because if something shows up, well, you've now got to go out and run that whole radial to prove that the antenna wasn't affected. Where with a mom proof, all you're doing is proving out everything in the system, and once everything's proved, you set it up according to the computer model and walk away.
This sounds like it could take a whole show.
It could, so we don't want to really go into it right now.
Let's talk about a mom proof on another show. But I've heard about this, and I really don't understand how this could be acceptable to the FCC. I guess it proves out very well. So I really do want to explore this on another show. Okay, well, with Tom Ray, you got the yin and the yang. You got the voluntary inspection, which could hurt, probably won't. At least it'll get you going. And then we got Tom fixing the EAS system for New York. So here's my question, guys. Tell me why this is not the absolute future of radio. What isn't this the transistor radio of today? Isn't this the Radio Shack flavor radio?
For those of us who can't see, what are you holding?
I see. I was holding up my smartphone with the Stitcher app up on it.
I can tell you right now, part of the reason. I was listening to Pandora on the way home today.
Yeah.
Got into heavy traffic. Stop. Yeah. Start. Stop. Start.
Really?
Stop. Start. Yeah.
Will we always have that problem?
We won't always have that problem, but there are also other inherent issues, which are how many people are going to pay for that. for the bandwidth, and we've got the cell phone companies who are making it their life's work to put bandwidth caps on their service to make money.
I hear that and you say that, and yet T-Mobile now just offered me a new service, unlimited 4G on the T-Mobile network. They didn't used to have that. Now they do.
However, Verizon and AT&T, which are the two biggest, are going in the other direction. So I don't see even with Sprint with unlimited, pretty much everybody thinks that at some point that's going to go the other way as well, because they're running out of ways to make money, so they've got to come up with new ways to do it. Now, I'm not saying that it's not, I'm not putting my head in the sand and saying, well, it's not going to happen. However, there are at least for now some technical limitations and price limitations, and again, it's one of those shiny things. And I remember telling the story about, what if Steve Jobs came out on stage and talked about all these things, and it turns out he was holding a radio. People are predicting the demise of radio because it's not sexy like a smartphone. Yeah. But they're ignoring the realities of it. It's a one-to-many thing that works exceptionally well. I mean, it just, yes, there are some issues with commercials.
Given the choice between a customized experience and being one of 20,000 listeners, and you're just one of 20,000 listeners, and the radio station is talking at you because they have to, because you're one of 20,000. How long will people put up with being one of 20,000 when they could be one of one or close?
Is Pandora going to tell me why I'm stuck on the freeway on my way to work?
No, that's what the Garmin's for, like Paul Brenner.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. The Garmin can tell me that there's a problem. It's not going to tell me any kind of detail on it. Is Pandora going to tell me, on my way home if there's an issue with the weather that I need to be concerned about? There are all these things that that radio brings to the table that are always going to be there, and it's kind of sexy right now to predict the demise of radio because of all of these different services, but it's just not. It will be there. It will be an adjunct to radio, just like CDs didn't kill. The iPod was supposed to kill radio. How is what you're holding any different than an iPod, other than somebody else is randomly playing music instead of you randomly playing your own?
Well, radio will do very well for itself.
Yeah,
I'll
give you a reason why this thing, why that thing in your hand, Kirk, won't replace radio. Ask a couple of million people in New York and New Jersey during Hurricane Sandy how good their smartphones worked when there was no power to run the cell sites and they couldn't get information.
Gotcha.
So
whether you can see it or not, on this smartphone, this is the Stitcher app, and I just punched in for local stations, and it's showing me 4. I don't know why it's not showing me more than that. There's some other apps that show me a lot more of them. But I have my local stations here. I can listen to my local stations this way instead of on a radio. Well, okay, that's not the key thing though. The radio has little metadata that I can use or deal with, and it has no interactivity. A traditional radio, I can't like a song. I can't give a song 2 stars or 4 stars, or say that I'd like to hear that song more often, and either have that radio station's feed to me customized by my likes or dislikes, or have that feedback go to the radio station and they take a tally and they say, well, that song really is popular in the afternoons or in the evenings. Maybe we should play that one more often. Whether they'd actually pay attention to that, I don't know. But with traditional radio, there's absolutely no feedback. Here is an Insignia HD radio. Let me turn it on for you. That this is the latest in traditional radio technology with HD built into it. In fact, you'd even have it scan HD only stations. And there's absolutely zero interactivity with this radio. All I can do is consume exactly the way the station wanted me to consume. I have no feedback.
I'm trying to understand. I'm trying to understand why that's such a bad thing.
Well, because so many other things that we do in our lives, now we get to feedback about them. And that hasn't been the case. There's so many facets of this, and there's so many good arguments. I just want to hash some of them out in this show to see if we can maybe change each other's mind or crystallize our thinking about how we think about these things.
Well, here's
my 16-year-old daughter never listens to the radio ever. It's always YouTube. And someday it's going to be, when she discovers Tuned In or Stitcher or something else, it's going to be that. But right now, it's just one YouTube.
See, now my
Whose fault is
17-year-old
that?
daughter listens. My 17-year-old daughter listens to top 40 station in town. Why? Because all of her friends are doing the countdowns and voting on the songs at night, and winning tickets to concerts. Those are all things that are going to happen on the local radio station that aren't going to happen on a Pandora or anything else. So there is interactivity. It's a different kind of interactivity, but it's there. And again, that's it's sexy to think that radio is dead because it's old. And granted, there are some radio stations that would be better off just going away, but there are a lot of them that again, talk radio. You can't do that on Stitcher. And so there's all these different things that are different, but they're different in a good way. And
why can't you do talk radio on Stitcher? Of course you can.
How do you reply back? And you could, I guess you could try that. Of course, you could be right in the middle of the conversation. It stops and buffers, or there's a 10-minute delay because of buffering. You can't. There's.
I guess I don't get this buff. Sure, maybe if you're mobile, you're going to get buffering. I got Wi-Fi.
Well,
radios
where do you
in the
think
house,
most of the
and they
radio
just play
listening
and play
happens?
and play and play?
Most of radio listening happens in the car.
Chris, Tobin, you were about to say something. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to interject. I'm of the camp of what Chris Tarr is saying. Radio has its benefits and detractions, but the reason it's having trouble with imaging is not because of the technologies, as you pointed out, with Stitcher and the smartphone or HD radio and what it is. It's more about the fact that the industry itself can't find a way to promote how to do what it did best for many years. You pointed out that it doesn't have interaction. You can't do feedback, talking, whatnot. Well, that's what they used to call listener lines. But when you had, and you mentioned that the radio is speaking at you, 20,000 people at a hit, if you will. Well, there was a time when radio didn't talk at you, it talked to you, and you interacted with it. We've lost sight of that. Now we've become basically, here's what Wall Street wants from the public companies, here's how it's going to be, and this is what we perceive to be the real thing. End of story. The big corporations, the large broadcast groups show that. Any music station that does nothing more than just play music and does not interact with its audience is basically doomed. And you could be in a major market or a medium market and be doomed because there's no interaction, there's no feeling. Stitcher, Pandora, all the others are just the same thing, but they give a little extra. What? Oh, yes, I can feel it, I can touch it, I can interact. Wow, that's nice. As Chris pointed out, that's only good for a certain moment. And that's, where you run into the issue. I've listened to and worked with a couple of radio stations that go beyond the just play music and do nothing else because that's all we can afford to do because, woe is me, we have no money. And the ones that do interaction actually make it work. And they take the technology and work it for them. It's not going to be easy. And you know what? You have to rethink it. You got, I'll use that phrase, you got to think out of the box. I think Chris is totally right. It can work. And with the Pandora, in his case, with the stuttering or buffering, whatever you want to call it, it does happen. If you're in home and you're using a Wi-Fi, you won't get any problems. But you're out and about on the street. I've used my phone for many things, for listening to streaming audio, I'll call it. And there have been plenty of occasions where it's buffered and dropped out. And then there's Tom's point about what happens during a weather incident that knocks out that link. Because that link, remember, does not follow the same rules of mission critical thinking as us broadcasters have been taught and basically have to stay alive. Remember, cell sites don't have to have more than 4 hours of battery life. After that, what happens.
And here's the other thing is for some reason there's a group of people, and they're mostly tech guys, who seem to think it's a zero-sum game. It's Pandora wins, radio loses. Radio loses, or radio wins, Pandora loses. Stitcher wins, Pandora and radio lose. It doesn't work that way. And it's just like, again, from the beginning of time, 45s are going to kill radio. TV's going to kill radio. Records are going to kill radio. Tapes are going to kill radio. Yeah, over and over and over and over. Now, that doesn't mean we say, "Oh, I don't see anything. It's okay. Everything's fine." But if we listened to the pundits, every time, radio would have been dead 50 years ago. It just doesn't work that way. Now we need to see what they're doing, and we need to figure out. Hang on a second, my screensaver just kicked on. We need to understand why these are working. We need to see those trends. We need to be aware of them. We need to know that they're competition and understand that. But to just say, 5 years from now we're not going to be relevant, it's a mistake.
I was just trying to find the Oh yeah, Lou Dickey at Cumulus doesn't see a business model in mobile at all. This was from February 8th of this year. He appeared on Bloomberg TV and he said, "There's no business model for streaming." Is he right? Is there a business model for streaming or not? And by the way, Chris, I want to agree with you that these other services don't necessarily cut away 100%. If Pandora gets 10 new listeners, that doesn't mean there are 10 fewer radio listeners. I believe it means that more people are sampling more things. That was brought out in the conference that we had this week.
Here's the thing: is if 10 people are switching from Pandora, is that 10 people who switch from radio, or 10 people who are no longer listening to their songs on their iPod?
Yeah. Okay.
That's what I'm talking about. Is everybody assumes these people are coming from radio? Well, there's a whole other line of technologies that people were running in the car that are coming from there as well.
Here's the this is a better example. Here's the TuneIn app, and just looking at my local stations, and there are a ton of them. I actually punched one there. I mean, there's stations, local ones that I didn't even know existed, they're on the TuneIn app for Nashville, Tennessee. Just hit my local stations, and they're all there. Then all the AM stations are there, which in today's modern household, does an AM radio even work very well? I don't have an AM radio in my house that I would like to listen to because it picks something up well. Okay, there's WSM. It's 4 miles away. It's 50,000 watts. I pick them up okay. In the same app, by the way, in case you're interested, there's various sheriff's departments and other public service things here. There could be NOAA Weather Radio. Nobody ever bothered to stream NOAA Weather Radio out of Nashville until I did. It's available now on Wonder Radio. Wonderground. Wonderground.com. You can go find NOAA Weather Radio for Nashville now. But I find myself not listening to radio very much at all. And I like a lot of the stuff that's on radio, but I find it much more convenient to listen to it in the form of a podcast or something delayed. Tell you what, point your browser to ubertalk.com. UBERTALK. Ubertalk.com. I doubt we'll bring the site down, but every talk show you ever thought about listening to is listed there, and you can listen to them live. And there's also RSS feeds for things that are podcasts. I may not be able to listen to a talk show live that I want to. I'm busy. I'm doing other stuff, but I'd like to catch up on it sometime. Isn't this a good way to go? And wouldn't this supplant radio eventually?
No.
I agree.
Here's what the problem is. You mentioned Lou Dickey. No, there's no money in mobile. You know what? Whatever. His metrics probably are warped because they're based on he's got to pay debt service. Let's say facts. He's in the same boat as several other people. The reality is this: it's the industry folks. It's the same is true in other industries that people don't pay attention. I worked for an organization many years ago that was trying to do something with mobile, with podcasts, and with the content of the radio station. And interestingly enough, we actually did an experiment, programming department and engineering, and did a mock test and tried this method over a streaming setup so that if you're a listener and you get up in the morning, it's a Tuesday morning at 7 o'clock, and you got to catch your bus or train or whatever it may be, or hop in the car, you could grab the latest report from the station on your iPod, because iPods were real popular at the time, just that was it. And then off you go. And in the car, you could quickly listen to a snapshot of what was happening in the world of news and sports. Great idea. We actually made it work mechanically, workflow. It actually came to be. No one was interested in doing anything with it because they said it won't work. There's no way we can sell it. We can't monetize this. Mind you, we sat in a room, programming, engineering, marketing, and came up with a plan and actually found a way to make money off it. But because of the others, like you pointed out, Kirk, and Chris has mentioned, everybody has this preconceived notion of the zero-sum game and whatever you want to call it. They just poo-pooed it immediately. Not even interested in trying it. All it was going to cost us too much. We have to add more people and make this work. When we automated it, we used the in-house automation we already had. The cost was only several $100s for a new version of software. It would have worked like a champ. And today, what's doing it? You can do that with Yahoo News and other stuff. Stitcher and everybody else is doing the exact same thing. But they're not the radio station. They're not with the content that people want. So these are things that can definitely be done, but nobody's doing it. And that's why I don't believe anything that, whether it's, Clear Channel CEO John Hogan or what's the other guy, what's his name? I can't think of it now. Or Lou Dickey at Cumulus. I don't think they get it. They don't get it because they're not interested, because they need a quick buck. They want money right now. Nobody's willing to think it out. And Chris works for people and has worked with groups that do make sense and understand it. But I've seen it, and there are people that do it. I just think,
and that's the thing is, and again, that's, yes, right now, when Lou Dickey says that, what Lou Dickey's saying is, I can't figure out a good way right now to monetize it. That's all he means by that. It's not that there's no value in it. There's very much value in it if you do it properly. But yes, right now there's not a real good, we still haven't figured the right way to make some money off of this. However, right now that isn't important. It will come once we figure that out. But here's the thing is, again, you look at this bigger picture. Every one of these, most of these services, you're paying a fee for. You're paying for bandwidth on top of that. There are. I
disagree. You're not paying incrementally for the bandwidth.
Sure you are. Well, if
you stream 8 hours a day, 30 days a month, are you gonna? If you stream a 64 or 128 kilobit per second audio stream, are you gonna hit your bandwidth cap? No. Now, if you're streaming Netflix movies all day, yeah, you're going to do that.
Okay, so if you're only streaming and you're never doing any surfing or checking your internet or using any other apps, you're right.
That's piddly do.
But here's and again, but you're okay. So let's see. So I'm also going to pay $3.99 for Pandora. Then if I want any, another, streaming service on top of that, then you've got everybody in the middle who wants their cut. You're hearing all this talk about the network providers trying to charge content creators for bandwidth because, we don't want to be dumb pipes. There's all these different things. But again, what it all boils down to is there's this whole group of people who say, hey, look, shiny, bright, look at radio. It's old. Forget about it. And, it's become this whole, radio's dead because they're old and they don't know what they're doing. And it's just not true. It's sexy to say that, and it's popular to say that. But so far, nobody said anything that's the magic bullet here. Again, I listen to Pandora in the car. You know what it replaced? It replaced my iPod and my CD player. I still turn on the radio every day. And I guarantee you, when you say you don't listen to the radio anymore, well, you're in a little different category than a lot of people. You're not my mother. You're not, even my wife doesn't listen to streaming radio in the car. You're a little bit, you're still far out over here ahead of the curve. Does that mean we're not getting there? We may get there eventually. But to say anecdotally, because this is what you do, that this is where everything is.
Yeah.
I thought everybody was going to have Palm Pilots back in 1998.
Oh, the Palm Pilot
never happened.
All right. Let's think about what we're saying right here. Think about your positions on radio. Radio's not dead. Think about how you're feeling about that compared to how people felt about their stalwart, money-making, cash machine AM station and that little FM license that they got. There were FM stations that in the mid-'70s, their programming consisted of a record changer with albums on it stacked up on that tall spindle and a switch that the engineer hooked up so that when the tone arm would pick up and return automatically, it would hit a switch to play, you're listening to the mellow sounds of WXYZ FM. And then it would drop and play the next record. That was the automation system. That's all they cared about it. And remember when AM stations with an FM also, they weren't allowed to simulcast 24/7. They had a certain amount they were not allowed to simulcast every week. And so they had to figure out what the heck are we going to put on the FM that won't cost us an arm and a leg. Is that where we are with radio vis-a-vis streaming?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, Kirk, with the AM stations. I worked for a station in Connecticut that the FM arguably was the first commercial FM in the world. They were on in 1939, did a lot of experimentation, and we went through the war, came up to the early 1950s and said, this FM thing isn't going anywhere, so they sold it. And 5 years later, put another FM station on the air because all of a sudden FM started doing something in the early 60s, not much, but in the 70s it exploded. I remember working the board at a top 40 AM station, and it was literally almost overnight. All of a sudden the FM was the big station. It was like, how'd that happen?
But look at we're not, it's not like we're looking at all this bandwidth and just throwing something on there because we have it. It's not a real good comparison to say this is where FM was back in the 60s. And by the way, what do we see lately? We see a lot of the programming, especially sports and those sorts of things that are on the AMs now being put on the FM. Why? Because they were making money. It's all about the content. And I go back to, if you want to make these comparisons, what's the last part of Pandora's name? Radio. Why? Because, that's what they want to be. So, Pandora goes way out of their way to compare themselves to radio. Why? Because radio is successful. And they want a piece of that. So it's not like we have this bandwidth and we're sitting on it like the FMs were back in the set. The reason they put the record changers on there is because they had the license and didn't know what to do with it. It's, we're not in that situation today. We have the bandwidth. We know what to do with it, or at least we're figuring it out, the people who are more savvy. The ones who are going to fail at this are the ones who just deny that it exists and keep doing their own thing. But, there seems to be some movement in radio finally to capitalize on this stuff. And again, I wouldn't count them out. I think radio admittedly was very slow to respond to the internet. And I think a lot of it had to do with, at first we were so hung up on how we're going to make money off of it that we didn't see what was going on around us. But I see a lot of companies really starting to figure it out now. And even some rope, like the company I work for now, the station I work for now, it's a little different because we're public radio, but we have an exceptional app on every platform for streaming. We have exceptional streaming. We were just talking about the Telos Pro Stream, and we put a lot of effort and money into our internet stream. It's as important to us as what we do on the air. And once we start, once everybody starts getting there, I think that this debate will certainly quiet down a little bit, because it's it just has got to this point where it's sexy to say it, and nobody has really said why that is, other than because this is the internet. This is going to be better because it's the internet and it's interactive and all these things. Okay, great.
I agree that we got to be wary of thinking of radio badly just because it's old. It's been around a long time. But I look at other people. Okay, there's me. There's what I do, how I behave, what I interact with media, television, and so forth. But those around me. My wife discovered the Wi-Fi radio, and now that's what's on. I don't know people who listen to the radio with any kind of the same fervor that we used to listen to the radio with. And I guess these call-in shows. I mean, if you call in, you make requests. Chris, you mentioned in Milwaukee, your daughter listens to a station that her friends listen to, and I'm pleased, but I'm kind of surprised that I mean, isn't it uncool to listen to the radio?
No, because in our city, the top 40 station is live 24/7, and they do it right. So it's absolutely not cool. But here's the thing: again, it's anecdotal, because everyone I know is this way. We're doomed. And I'm telling you, radio listening, if you look at it in total, has not significantly declined. It's declined. It's not significantly declined. It may, if we keep our heads in the sand. But to say that everybody else is listening to these things, I can't. You can't tell me you never turn on the radio and you don't listen to it ever. I mean, I don't buy it. Sure, you may listen to the streaming services more than you did before, but again, I can tell you, I have anecdotal evidence the other way. Of course, I don't mean, I don't take that to mean that, the internet's getting killed or anything, but, I just don't see, I see people listening to these things, but I see them replacing, again, my wife listens to her iPod in the kitchen. She doesn't stream, she listens to her iPod. I assume that if she started streaming, it would replace her listening to the iPod in the kitchen, not listening to the radio, which she never did. So, again, I don't see this as this technology is replacing this. I see it as it's, another option, another tool in the toolbox or whatever for entertainment. And it doesn't need to be this whole if this, then that.
What about this FM chip in phones? And that's such a new idea to Americans, and yet all over the world, in places that are not America, they have FM chips, and they use FM chips because the radio, the cell phone is the transistor radio. It's convenient, and when they're listening to an FM station, a phone call will interrupt the FM, and they don't have to do anything else, just answer the phone call. I think India is really big on this, and they got 1 point something billion people there, or about a billion.
You know why?
Why?
The reason we here in the United States have such issues with these new technologies, and as you pointed out, FM chips around the world are popular in a phone. Many other things are popular in a phone. However, here in the United States, the phone carriers are permitted to, through lobbying, change the way the model should be so that they favor and they do it themselves. Think about this. Back in 1970, you couldn't plug an answering machine to the phone network because it was illegal. Then there was a lawsuit. Now you can. Then later on, you could plug in any phone into the phone network because the phone company lost that battle. Funny thing about cell phones today, you can't take the SIM card from your phone and put it into another phone. Oh, because it's locked. Sort of reminiscent of the days of the old network procedures that you couldn't touch their network. Hello? FM chip. Why isn't it in the phone? That's odd. They manufacture the phones with it. It's not turned on. But everywhere else in the world it is.
Once you fulfilled your it's locked because of the way they're sold in the U.S.
That's the only way they sell. They're just now starting to open up with the no contracts because the competition is forcing it because of the iPhone.
I've never had a cell company, and I've been with all of them but AT&T. I've never had a cell company tell me that I couldn't unlock my phone as long as I was at the end of as long as I was past the 2-year contract. And several times I've unlocked a phone with their blessing before the end of the 2-year contract.
Why do you have to have a 2-year contract at all?
Because people don't want to pay for their phones. That people would rather pay.
That is, you know what? There's a lot of things you don't want to pay for, and there's other ways around it. There's no competition. That's the problem. The 3 phone companies don't have competition, so we're locked into a model that makes no sense.
Yeah. Now there are phone companies cropping up. There's Republic that's cropping up where you pay full boat for your phone, and unlimited text, calling, and data is $19.95 a month. With taxes, $23.
Now, is Republic? Is that
the reason the phones are $500 and $600 because there's no competition to bring the price down? That's a poor excuse to say the contracts that help you pay for things. You pay more for the phone after 2 years than you would if you paid up front.
Absolutely,
it's a lot of bunk.
Is Republic that company though? Is Republic that company that dumps most of your stuff onto Wi-Fi first, though?
Well,
instead of
if there's Wi-Fi, it prefers Wi-Fi. It goes to
because
Wi-Fi
it really is not. That is really not unlimited data or calling. If you exceed a certain amount, they'll cut you off. So again, we're back to that. There is no free lunch here. At least for now. There is on Sprint and T-Mobile, but I expect that's going to change. And again, now granted, you may, you're right. You can stream all the time, and it doesn't it doesn't use a ton of bandwidth. But Joe Consumer doesn't know that. Joe Consumer is going to worry about going over his bandwidth every month, paying extra fees. So we get back into that as well. That there's until the cell phone companies really get together and truly offer unlimited data. People are always going to have that in the back of my head. Is that going to burn through my data? Am I going to get an extra bill at the end of the month?
It's going to be interesting to find out when we get LTE at the dashboard of your car, and that's coming in 2014, supposedly. When it's built into the dash of your car, what will the plans look like? That'll be interesting. I imagine it's not. I mean, they're not going to give it away. So it's still going to be an extra bill. Yeah, but right now people pay money for XM Sirius.
They don't pay that much for XM.
No, they don't pay. No, they don't pay that much. But what do you get with XM Sirius? It's a one-way conversation. That's all you get is a choice of a whole bunch of channels that don't always sound so good because of the low bit rate. We're going to continue this conversation. You're listening to a lively discussion on This Week in Radio Tech. It's episode number 158. I forgot what did I name this episode? It was here. What did I do with it? Oh, I can't find it. Didn't I name this episode?
Don't cross the streams.
No. Where's my where's my radio? Because after we talk about the Omnia processor, there's 2 car companies who have said that after some date we're going to quit putting AM and FM radios on the dashboard because it's not in our interest to have them there. We'll talk about that in a minute. Right now we're going to talk about the Omnia One audio processor. Actually, tell you what, we're going to talk about audio processing for streaming. How's that for apropos? Am I leveraging this show or what? Omnia makes several processors that are appropriate for stream processing. And what does audio processing do for your stream? It makes it sound better. It makes it sound the audio levels consistent. It makes the best use of the limited bits that you have. It allows the encoder, the audio encoder that's taking a couple megabits per second worth of audio data that's digitized, and knock that down to 56 kilobits a second or 128 kilobits. In other words, knocking most of the data out of this and coding this so it could go across limited bandwidth connections. And to do that well, you need for the audio to be processed well before it goes into the encoder. The best sounding stations on the internet, they all process somehow, some way. A lot of them use the Omnia One multicast. Now, this is kind of the king of the hill here in audio processing for the internet. It's a one rack unit box. It's a standalone box, audio in, audio out. It doesn't do the encoding. It does the audio processing for encoding. This network, the GFQ network, Andrew Zarian is using one right now on his network. A lot of serious internet broadcasters are using the Omnia One, but there are other choices. We have the Omnia AXE. This is software that runs on a PC. It includes audio processing, and it includes the encoder, too, if you want to use that. But you can't just do audio processing. There's also the Omnia FXE. We haven't talked about that on this show. The Omnia FXE is a file-based audio processor. Do you do a podcast? Maybe you produce one yourself at home or at your office. You want to process that audio, but you don't have all day to process it. Just take the file, drag it into the Omnia FXE interface, and bam, a few minutes later, that whole file has been audio processed to sound good for the whole duration. And this can also happen automatically. As automatic functions, files go into a folder. Omnia FXE checks the folder, processes those files, and shoots them out to another folder. So those are a couple options right there. Then there's the also the Telos ProStream, which contains in it Omnia processing, intended exclusively for audio processing for streaming. I'd encourage you to go to the website, omniaaudio.com, and you'll see under products, there's an area called coded audio. Well, that's what internet streaming is. It's coded audio. And that's what podcasts are. That's what a file is if you're using MP3 or AAC or some other encoding technology. Under coded audio, there's the Omnia AXE, the Omnia FXE. Those are both software packages. And there's the Omnia One multicast. If you're really serious and got some stuff to do, there's the Omnia 8X. It's 8 processors in one 2-rack unit box. So you can process a lot of simultaneous audio going out over the internet. Check them out. Our sponsor, omniaaudio.com. If you do any streaming, it can really help you out. All right, episode 158, we're talking about where's my radio? A couple of car manufacturers have whispered, we're taking radios out in maybe as soon as 2015. AM, FM, gone. Why? Well, they don't make any money on AM and FM. Auto manufacturers, I hope I'm not speaking out of school here, but they're paid by some of the internet aggregators and like Pandora or content providers like Pandora and others. And, well, they're also paid something by Ubiquity, the HD radio folks, for the radios that they put in their cars. The AM folks and the FM folks, we don't pay car manufacturers anything to put our interests in the car. So where's this going?
So what I'm hearing is the auto manufacturers are going, I don't care what people want. We're going to do what's best for us.
That may be the case.
That's exactly what it sounds like. And I have a feeling, and I could be wrong, and I guess we'll find out, but I have a feeling that they're going to be selling a lot of the optional AM, FM radios when they sell cars.
Oh, selling them. Okay. Now, you know what? It used to be that a car didn't even come with a radio, or maybe an AM radio. It used to be that radios were pretty optional anyway. For some years now, though, they've been standard, even with a cassette or a CD player. We may see those dates returning.
I just think that, I think there's some tech people who salivate at the prospect of that, but I don't think that's going to be all that wildly popular. I think people are still going to want to have radios in their cars, AM, FM radios. So I think that to say that we're just not going to do it and people are going to love it, I don't agree with that. I think there'll be a subset of people that don't care, but I think in general, I think people are still going to want to have radios in their car for all the reasons I talked about. So,
if that's true, are they willing to pay for those radios? Let's say that you a standard, Ford something or other in 2016 comes with a free 6-month subscription to the data, and it comes with Pandora and iHeartRadio and whatever some other offerings are that are monetizing by lots of involvement, not aggregators like TuneIn or Stitcher, but people that are actually responsible for creating the content and providing it on their own platform, like iHeartRadio or Pandora, those you get free.
Well, ask how well that works.
You want an FM, you got to pay for that radio to go in there.
Ask how well the whole Sirius XM thing did with putting radios in cars, how that worked out for them in terms of offering the free and then getting them to re-up. I have it in my car, and they literally beg me. I get it for next to nothing just to keep it so they can keep their subscriber numbers on it. They're not making any money off of me. So, I think that what's going, the possibility exists that they're going, that people are going to say, if I have to pay extra for this AM FM radio, I'm not buying this car. So they're going to be throwing it in. I just think that it makes some headlines, and I think it gets them a little cred. I think in reality, I don't think it, I think again that this is a lot of chest puffing and there's not a lot of meat to it. I just don't see that being a real viable alternative.
They'll try it and it'll fail. They're just doing it because they want to get the money. They see the other radio type services, like you pointed out, Chris, Pandora Radio, XM Sirius Radio, pay me to put their thing in the car. How come this other radio service doesn't? Maybe it's time they should. That's what's driving it.
Right.
Because they're not doing a survey asking people, do you want your AM, FM radio? And first question they'll ask is, if it's going to cost this, then I don't want it. Well, see, people don't want radio. That's, it's a load. Again, I'm going to use the word, it's a load of punk. The industry needs to get off its rump and start touting, grassroots, go out there and do stuff. You know what? Tom pointed out really succinctly. Hurricane Sandy came through. The only radio services that you could get, and I live here in the city, and I can tell you, I walked through parts of downtown Manhattan. The only services you could get were off the radio, AM and FM. Cellular was barely available. My phone switched between roaming in lower Manhattan, where it doesn't roam for any reason, and to 1X, 2G, 3G. It went off. I lost connections, nothing. But however, my Walkman my cell phone with a FM chip in it did function.
Do we design our whole lives and infrastructure for the once in 50-year hurricane? I know we can give the example.
You don't have to, because it's not just a hurricane. It's not just a hurricane. We've had gas pipe explosions, steam pipe, and it's taken out cell sites in parts of the city.
Sure.
Kirk, I'm sitting here in the chat room talking with someone right now in regards to the bandwidth issue, and he came back and said, well, IPv6, this is going to go away. It's like, no, IPv6 just makes more.
That's just changing the house numbers.
If the spectrum is limited and finite, you're not going to solve the problem of when 10,000 people hit one cell site and want to listen to their internet radio. And the 10,000 and first person comes in, and there ain't no more. Now what? With radio, you can have 1 million people listening to the same station. Doesn't matter.
Again, I don't want to give the impression that internet radio is useless and we should ignore it and it's just a thorn in our side.
No reason not to.
It's very real, but again, it has become this big sexy tech thing to say radio's dead. That this is where the future is, and I'm saying. That's part of the future, but it's not everything, because there are just some things inherent to radio that if we do them right, you can't beat them with the internet. You just can't, and it's a fact. Now, again, if radio continues down the road it's doing with crummy content and that kind of thing, yeah, okay, we'll get beat just because we suck, but it's not because of the technology, and that's what these startups and things are forgetting. It's not that it's yes, technology is a big part of the issue. The other part of the issue is content. If you put a radio station on, like the Top 40 station here in Milwaukee, that is programmed exceptionally well, that has talent that's out there in the streets, that is very interactive, their numbers, their 1824 numbers are through the roof. They're phenomenal. Why? Because it's a better experience than Pandora. And that's what happens when you do it right. So, yes, if we die, it's going to be because of content, not because of technology.
Well, I can't disagree with you there. You're absolutely right. That years ago, 20 years ago, I would meet people. I engineered for a rock station that was quite innovative and quite good. Great programmed against another rock station in Memphis. But this out-of-town rock station had some unique programming, and I talked to people a couple times a month, who would say, "Hey, Kirk, glad to meet you, man. I just put up this big antenna on my house so I can pick up your station." And I know that as engineers, you've met people like that have gone to somewhat, if for nowadays, extraordinary lengths to listen to your station. Well, I'm making my own argument here. Here's your extraordinary lengths now. It's your cell phone with a TuneIn or Stitcher app or iHeartRadio. I love a station called 700 WLW in Cincinnati, and now it's owned by Clear Channel. I like that station. I can listen to it here easily. I can't listen to it on AM anymore. I can't pick it up except with a great deal of trouble, and only at night here in Nashville, where I live.
So Kirk, let me interrupt you for just a second. When you're in Cincinnati, do you listen to WLW on the radio or on your cell phone?
On the radio.
There you go.
But I haven't been to Cincinnati in 2016.
I'm just saying. I was talking to a listener of my station here a while back. He goes, "Yeah, I listen to your app all the time. I use your app. I live in Sheboygan." He goes, "It's for those times when I can't pick up your signal when I'm not in Milwaukee, so I turn on the app." And that, there you go again. I mean, you say, "Oh, I love WLW, so it's great. I can listen to it on my cell phone." But then when you're in the area where you can hear it, what are you doing? You're listening to WLW on the radio. That's a win for radio. That's not a win for internet versus terrestrial radio. That's a win for radio. That's about the content. That's the conversation.
Yeah. Kirk, listening to the distant stations like that, people just, I don't know, they don't do that nowadays. I mean, when my son was growing up, the challenge, if you're not sitting there tuning that radio and turning that radio and pulling in that distant station, to me that was part of the fun of it, and you don't have the challenge anymore. And I had some, I forget what station one night, and I was fiddling with it, and I said to my son, "Check it out from wherever it was," and he said, "Big deal. I can probably find a stream and pick it up." He says, "I can listen to it that way." But you're missing the challenge.
Well, but the challenge is different now. Now, the same kids who would have been listening to the radio then, now they're figuring out how to hack port 1900 on people's routers to get reverse UPnP working and get into their networks. I mean, there's always interesting technical challenges for propeller-headed kids to deal with. Here's where I want to move our conversation in something. What if we said that internet radio? Let's see. Where are people spending their time? Where do you spend your time? Do you spend your time, and not all of you do, but there are plenty of people who spend many minutes, maybe even a couple hours a day on Facebook. Why? It's kind of interaction, right? You're arguing, you're posting, you're complimenting, you're liking. People are spending time with Facebook in this social engagement on the internet, instead of doing things like listening to radio or watching TV. TV folks are hurting a bit over this. What if listening to the radio could include a completely social aspect? Just like right now, if you're watching GFQlive.tv, if you're watching this netcast live, there's a chat room going on. And the chat room is kind of important. I mean, the chat room is like, sometimes it's like our brain, right? We forget somebody's name or how something works, or digging for a question that ought to be asked. The chat room often comes up with that. So it's a meta conversation about the show. What if we started to live in a world where network TV was like that, where even DVR TV was a bit like that, where radio was like that? If radio was like that. So what if, like I'm here in Nashville. There's some talk show hosts here in Nashville. There's one who gets some national syndication, a guy named Phil Valentine. Phil's popular here in Nashville. He's popular in a few other cities too. He's a good talk show host. What if there was a convenient app that I could have running on my PC or maybe on my smartphone that I could listen to Phil Valentine, maybe through the app, maybe through regular FM, and at the same time I could watch a stream of comments of people going by about what Phil is saying. And maybe I could participate. Maybe I'd want to. Maybe I just want to read it. Maybe I wouldn't care about it. So isn't there value in the socialization, the Facebooking of the media that we consume? Isn't there value in an app that would work, that would give you the social interaction of Facebook about what you're listening to? Chris Tarr, how would your daughter like to, instead of just interacting by hearing her friends occasionally get on the radio and say, would you play blah, 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 blah for me and my friend? what if there was an app that was a constant stream of people posting and talking and chatting about what was going on that station? Would that add value? Is that the future? Could it be the future? I think it really could be. I think it'd be very valuable.
I think there's a component of that already. I think you know, my daughter texts her friends or gets on Facebook when there's something on the radio they want to share. So I think there is a social component just by nature of the internet. You know, people are more connected now than they ever were. Is there a use for a chat thing? You know, probably. We've tried it a couple of times in a couple of different situations. Sometimes it works really well. Other times it kind of doesn't. You know, the problem is that if it's a constant thing, it tends to get old and it gets boring and people tend to go away. If you make it into an event, just like, for example, if you watched Idol every day for 365 days a year, Idol wouldn't be popular anymore. You know, it's the events that it's based around. And that's one of the things that is really great about radio is you can make things into events. Pandora is not an event. Pandora is a jukebox. Yeah. Radio is an event. And so, yes, do these. Here's a great example of where radio can leverage technology. I was working on a project a while back, speaking of Idol, where we wanted to have our morning show people on Skype, and you could watch them watch the show and listen to them comment on what's going on.
Okay,
and everybody
all
can
right.
participate in that.
All right.
So, you know, and so it's a great idea. You know, here are our morning people who are very funny and creative, watching Idol with you like they're in your living room, talking about what's going on and answering questions.
Like Mystery Science Theater, right? Like Mystery Science Theater.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Now there's something where you're leveraging technology with radio. And that's where the future is going to be with radio and internet technology, is creating these events that bring people together. It may not be 24/7 interaction, but 24/7 interaction isn't special.
It wears thin quickly. Well, hey, you know what, you were talking about chatting and, you know, all the stuff that's going on today, and what if radio could have done, or maybe it's missing the boat. Well, what if I mention these names, and if you remember the chatting that used to take place? Bruce Williams, Long John Nebel, Larry King, Paul Harvey, maybe Byron McGregor. Most people probably don't remember that name. Rush Limbaugh, Don Imus, Barry Farber, Bob Grant, Sally Jesse Raphael. Now, if radio had caught on early with the internet stuff, we'll call it that. I'm going to call it that. What would it have been like for, say, Barry Farber to be sitting at a desk talking to someone on the phone, looking at a chat window, and says, "Oh, this so-and-so is talking about this topic. Let's move in that direction." Now the phone changes and things like that. Radio isn't doing that. And the few people that do it, they go a little too far, and it just creates all kinds of havoc. There you go. There's your interaction, and you're still using the medium people consider outdated or, old or whatever. Or, I can't believe my 14-year-old is actually listening to the radio kind of thought. That's just my 2 cents.
All right. Well, you've talked about the past. How does what you said apply to where this is all going?
Well, where is it all going? If I'm Don Imus right now, he's on the Fox News channel. He's talking to people, being irreverent like he always has been. He could take technology for the radio station he's on, WABC, and wherever else he's heard, and he can interact with, chat rooms. He could do stuff. He's not doing anything because nobody's going in that direction. That's taking the old and bringing in the new. To Chris Tarr's point, you can take a video camera, bring a video in, and see visual interaction. There's another level. But to be 24 hours a day doing the same thing because Facebook does it, or Instagram and everything else, totally useless. It wears out. That's why Facebook is losing popularity. Instagram is now the big thing. And Twitter is still popular because it's able to reinvent itself.
In the chat room, Navion brings up a good point. If you had shows, big national shows, Rush Limbaugh or some other people, if you had a chat room there, you couldn't read all the stuff going by so fast. Some people would be putting their 2 cents worth in.
So you make an app that filters out stuff for you.
You make an app that works.
You learn a way to make it work. That's a poor excuse to say it goes too fast.
I want to filter the stuff I see to the top 5 contributors or the top 50 contributors or the contributors in my geographical area. And
you know what? I used to do call screening in my early days, and you know what? We had 24 lines flashing, and every time I took a call, hung it up, if it started ringing. It's the equivalent to a chat room screening, going past. You figured out how to make it work. You come up with something. I mean, it can be done, but nobody wants to do it. All they're interested in is cut costs. Don't do this. I can't afford this. There's no way to monetize it. It's a load of bunk. This metric doesn't work, and I can't get the website to be blah blah blah. It's like, really? But I talked to a friend of mine who's not in the radio business, who loves a certain thing about that particular station on their webpage, but can't get what he wants because they keep changing the way the page looks every month.
Well, I want to bring up an idea, and I'm sure this is going to come up over and over again over the next few years. The content distribution is definitely going in this direction. Doesn't mean it's cutting out radio. Radio will probably continue to radio, traditional broadcast over the air radio. Those numbers may continue to dwindle a little bit. But there are all these different proponents. There's different companies making infrastructure and apps for broadcasters and for non-broadcasters who want to get their stuff out there. We interviewed a guy about a year ago from this company called Commotion, right? They'll make an app for you, and there's some back-end infrastructure gear, and you can have conversations with the on-air staff and with each other, with other listeners. And there's lots of social aspects to that. There are a number of different companies with slightly different perspectives on the whole idea of first of all, audio delivery and social interaction and voting for songs or participating with talk programs and that kind of thing. And here's what I'm concerned about. I fully believe in competition. Competition's great. The better ones are going to shake out. In the meantime, if you're a broadcaster and you choose let's say a platform to go with that turns out to not be so popular, maybe it's kind of like the MySpace. But MySpace was fabulously popular for a while, and then went just down to next to nothing. I guess it's making a little bit of a comeback now. But it seems like the radio broadcasting industry is going to be very fractured with all these different platforms. If you're a Clear Channel station, you're on iHeartRadio. And there are a couple other companies that have made deals with iHeartRadio, right? Okay, maybe that's a great platform, but maybe it's not for everybody. I mean, why would all of Clear Channel's competitors pay Clear Channel to be on iHeartRadio? What if you're on Chris Tobin when you're at CBS? Doesn't CBS have its own platform, right, for CBS stations?
Yes, it does. Yeah. I think all this that's still the wrong way to go about it, but yes, they do.
And you see you can see where I'm going with this argument. On my Wi-Fi radio upstairs, that's a Grace digital radio. It's got 20 apps on the screen. I don't know which one I want. Do I want internet radio or do I want Pandora? Isn't Pandora internet radio? What's the difference? It's got iHeartRadio. Wait a minute, I thought internet radio should get me what's on iHeartRadio. I don't understand. There's all this fragmentation. Now, what I hope happens is that some company or some platform rises to the top and becomes a container, becomes a delivery box, a delivery GUI, and then radio stations and groups all choose their own back end. They choose whatever vendor they want to go with or write their own and have their own infrastructure back end and choose how much interaction they want to have with the audience. But people, the public, when they want to consume some audio content and perhaps interact with the content creators or other content consumers, there's one app or one browser page or one thing that they go to. Of course, they'd have choices, but there's one thing that becomes the de facto standard. I mean, Facebook is the de facto standard. Not everybody likes it. A lot of people don't like what they do, and sometimes they screw you around and slap you in the face. But everybody, I mean, Facebook is the third largest country on the planet. I didn't want to get on Facebook, and my dad wrote me an email, says, "Kirk, I'm on Facebook now. If you want to see pictures of what we're doing, get on Facebook." Okay, I'll get on Facebook. That was 4 years ago. I hope we get to a point where it's just frictionless for consumers to consume what radio stations and other content creators like GFQ create. And then it's frictionless for them to either have a conversation or not have a conversation with people who are also consuming that content or creating that content. And they don't have to choose from one of 72 apps in order to get it done. What do you think about what I said?
You're absolutely right. And I agree with you. And I said that 2 years ago when we talked about that same topic.
That's probably where I got the idea.
I was not a fan of iHeartRadio. I'm not a fan of the radio.com and a few others that are out there. It makes no sense because the experience that people need to have is what they expected or what they've always had with their AM/FM radio itself. The internet radio should be the same way. In Europe, I think in the UK, they actually have a common platform for some of the broadcasters. I think they're working in that direction.
BBC's got a platform, and I would assume that others use it too. But BBC did come up with an app, a page, or something that other people participate in it, and it's very interactive.
Right, and it gives them it gives you that model that you were talking about, where it's a back end. They just pop in the back end. But that's what needs to be done. But it's not going to happen with the current broadcast infrastructure of ownership that we have, because the people we're dealing with are people who are 50 years old and have only one idea of how things should be, and they're panicked right now trying to figure out what to do.
I'm 50.
So am I.
That's right.
But you know what? I've stayed current. You've stayed current. So have several other people I know have stayed current, but others have not. You know, they've been told one thing or another, and they're afraid to make any changes, and now they're stuck. And like I said, it's always about follow the money. Why is our iHeartRadio supposed to be such the savior of everything? How do I benefit if I'm an independent broadcaster and I'm going to participate? Just as you pointed out, my Grace Radio, I'm lost somewhere on the Grace Radio. How do I promote that? I can't. It's fragmented. You can't promote fragments. You can't even promote fragments on your hard drive. I mean, that's the problem. And no one wants to pay attention. It's just, and as Chris pointed out, it's the next shiny object. Hey, we got a shiny object. Let's go chase after it. There we go. And that's what's happened.
And I want to point out, I don't think I'm looking for the be-all, end-all app. I think that as long as there's competition in the marketplace, I just wish that whoever rises to the top, if somebody becomes the Facebook of audio content providers on the internet, that it becomes wildly popular for at least a few years, and it becomes the de facto standards. There's APIs for it, and people write apps that work in with it, and permissions and all that OAuth kind of stuff. That there's this kind of interaction is possible. Heck, maybe it's Facebook. You know, maybe what would Facebook gain? I think it'd be a lot if they came up with a platform for broadcasters and participation for the broadcaster. Maybe it's free, because Facebook gets to deliver, more. I'm not saying that's the best way for a broadcaster to go. There's a lot of fragmentation there. You'd be encouraged to go to other, similar but competing audio streams or things to listen to or interact with. But look, if you go to a lot of newspaper websites and you read an article and there's a comment section, a lot of times it's either discuss or it's Facebook comments, right? Yeah. So Facebook is leveraging their commenting ability into other people's websites. Just saying, there's a lot of possibilities here.
You're absolutely right.
I just want to make it frictionless for the user. I'm a pretty savvy user, and it ain't easy to find what you want to find.
And that's why.
Yeah.
That's why the industry has the image, the poor image it has. I mean, I was at a conference last year where Wells Fargo's media analyst was there, and she quickly pointed out that radio has the ability to really be a superstar, but she said the industry seems to have a problem how to get out of its own way. I sat there, and she sat on the same panel as Lou Dickey, Trog Keller, and a few others in the industry, okay? So this wasn't like some Wall Street financial thing. This was a broadcast event. And I was just flabbergasted because I actually heard something from somebody out of the business and said, look, I'm looking from the outside in. You guys really have something, and you're not doing anything with it. And there were several other analysts at the table I was sitting at for the lunch that said the exact same thing from other financial groups. So, it's not impossible. The problem is it's going to take somebody that's really willing to be, I guess you call it innovative or forward-thinking.
Let's get Paul Bretter back in.
Yeah, okay, there you go. Well, think about this one thing. For decades, we had AM/FM radio. Think about the user interface for AM/FM radio. Does everybody know how to use that? Yeah. Think about the user interface for televisions until, the new flat screens came along and they have apps on them. Does everybody know how to use a television? Pretty much. Click, click, up, channel up, down. One of the channels is the guide. I'm not saying that I guess what I'm saying is that's frictionless. It's just there's no company controlling the UI. The UI makes sense for the medium, all right? Well, this thing called the internet brings some challenges about. And of course everybody has a financial interest, and it's a little bit different. But in a sense, we all have the same financial interest. We want frictionless, easy access to our content. So if people want to find what they're looking for, they can find it. I don't know how that's going to happen, but I got to believe that an aggregator, like think of what if there was an Amazon.com for broadcasters. You can find anything you want on Amazon.com, and they even suggest stuff that's like the stuff that you want, right?
Well, I mean, Tobin and I, and Tobin, Chris brought this up a while back. I mean, he and I, we discussed that on this show 2 years ago that this needs to happen. And I think what will happen is it will, because it's the only way we're going to survive. But right now, unfortunately, CBS is a good example of that, because Chris knows the gentleman who runs their digital. He and I kind of sparred a little bit on that. And the bottom line is right now everybody's interested in monetizing it, and they can't do it if they don't control the platform, or they at least they believe that. So until that changes, until they understand that it's not, there are ways to make money without controlling the platform. It may be where they get forced to in order to survive, but that's the bottom line. We're preaching to the choir. That's exactly what has to happen. However, the people who are running the show, the guys in charge, are going to, they may have to feel a little pain before they accept that, because right now it's all about, how can we monetize this? How can we monetize this? If we don't control it, then we can't control the experience. We can't put our ads on it. We can't do, So once they realize that if they don't let go of that a little bit, they're going to die from 1,000 cuts, I don't think it's going to go anywhere.
Well, let's think about this. They can't control the platform. Well, what is the platform they're currently running with on AM and FM? Do you control the boxes that are made and the portables, the handhelds, the car radios? No. You don't influence them. You deal with whatever's in the car, and that's the way it goes. Yeah. So now you've got a platform that goes one step. So now can do this, this, and this. All right. So let's continue the same thinking, continue the same approach, and now advance our way of doing radio. I think that that's all you have to do. Yeah. Does it sound simple? Right. Yeah. Okay. Fine. It's simpler said than done. But the reality is, the more you fragment, the harder it will be to go back and find the right way, because people have become conditioned. As Kirk pointed out,
unfortunately, it's just not going to happen until the people in charge have a reason to do it. Because right now it's not appealing to them, and that's why they won't. I mean, we can sit here all night and debate that, and it makes sense. I mean, I think we're all in agreement that that's the right thing to do. But unfortunately, the people controlling the purse strings look at that as, well, if it's not our platform, we can't make the money off it. If we can't make the money off it, it's not worth doing. And it's extremely short-sighted. But again, I think you mentioned it earlier. You've got these CEOs running companies that are highly leveraged, that are having to pay debt service. And,
that's exactly
they can't afford to be that nimble. It's the bottom line. And what'll happen is eventually it'll be do or die. Either we all get together and we come up with a platform and we do this, or, we will lose to Pandora.
Here's a thought experiment. What if back in the 1960s, the Dumont Television Network, look it up, came out with a television. You could go down to your favorite store or mail order from Dumont, a color television that cost half of what all the other televisions cost, but it would only pick up the Dumont Television Network. How would that have fragmented the market? What would that be like? And that's kind of what we have now. You can go buy a radio, or you can use your existing computer and get free iHeartRadio app, but you can only listen to Clear Channel stations. Is there a parallel there? Is there? I want to keep beating this fragmentation thing. I know you guys are too. I'm just doing some thought experiments about what would it look like if we had, and I'd hate to have to use Radio Explorer, like Internet Explorer, as the only option. But what if stations could then control your experience within that app? You knew that you open Radio Explorer, and they have a version for Windows and for Linux and for OS X and for Android phones, Android platform. And what if that was the thing? Well, I guess we do have the browser, but somehow the browser isn't sexy, and the browser is a bit hard to use on a phone. You want to have an app that's got bigger buttons, and I don't know. I got to believe there's something here that we're going to need to boil it down to. And I guess I'm just trying to quicken the process and help make sure that the boat doesn't sink while we're trying to figure out where the holes are.
Well, every station out there has a website, and every website's different, and every website looks different, except for some that are cookie cutter. And if you look for certain information, you have to look for it under a different tab in some places. And what's the real difference, except that you're not doing it in real time?
Yeah.
It's still, the bottom line is everything's different. A car driving down the street gets you from point A to point B, but in some places, the headlight switch is over here. Some places it's over here on the steering wheel. Other places I've seen it on the right side. But they've standardized on putting the gas pedal for your right foot. So,
Chris, Tarr, what are the call letters of that station that is so popular in Milwaukee?
WXSS. It's 103.7 KISS FM.
103.7 KISS FM. Everybody listen to that and follow suit. We got to go. Any parting comments, Mr. Tarr?
No, I love these discussions. I firmly believe that the reports of radio's demise are premature.
We ought to mark this down and revisit it in 2016, 17, or 18 when a lot of dashboards have LTE or connectivity like that, and see what people are doing. I just think broadcasters need to get their content out through every channel that they possibly can, like Andrew Zarian does with this network. He's on every platform he can find, like other internet netcasters are. They just get it out there everywhere. And so something's going to shake out. I think you got to put the investment in now, though, to get your content out. Chris Tobin, you got any parting words?
I'm just going to say non-traditional revenue-generating companies will be the ones who will make the change for broadcasters. It'll be another non-broadcast entity that does the change, and then everybody's going to think it's a genius move.
Yeah. Tom Ray, thank you for being back with us. Any parting shots?
Well, getting back to some things we were talking about at the beginning, if us broadcasters themselves let those outside people come in, and if we keep sitting here, screaming about our demise, we're probably going to do ourselves in. We can be our own worst enemies. I think we need to promote ourselves. We need to get out there. We need to be relevant. We need to be in people's faces like we used to be, and we don't do that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, Bob Grant, Long John Nebel, Barry Farber, if you listen to those air checks, Tisket or Tasket, they went home in a basket. That's only a portion of an air check. CKLW. Imagine today if you were doing that kind of radio.
Would it work? Are you saying it would?
It would work. It would work if you did it right. You can do it. Perishable content always wins. That's why sports is big now. Fox Sports 1, the new television network in August.
Yeah, that's where I really have to take other people's temperatures because I'm not a sports guy. I wouldn't listen to 2 minutes of most any sport. So
that's okay. The reason it makes money is because it has an appeal, as Chris pointed out.
Yeah.
It has an appeal, and people are capitalizing on it. ESPN started 25 years ago with that. People laughed. Now look at it. Now they're trying to mimic them. You could do the same with news. You could do the same with talk. It's just that you have to be willing to go for the long term, or as the popular phrase, the long tail. For those of you that know that name,
that's right. Term. That's right. All right, well, guys, thank you so much for being here. Audience, chat room, thank you for participating with us. I've got some great ideas out of the chat room, and I sure appreciate it. We have spent this last hour and 20 minutes talking about the digital or non-digital or different future of radio broadcasting, and this is a conversation that we like to have every few months because it's worthwhile having. When we come across some new information, then we'll do it again, and we'll talk to more movers and shakers and leaders in that space. Like last week, we talked to Paul Brenner of Next Radio, getting the FM chip into cell phones in the U.S. and other projects. So appreciate you being with us. We're always looking for your notes, your comments at our website, thisweekinradiotech.com. You can certainly go there. You can also check out our show, of course, on our host network site, which is gfqnetwork.com. Appreciate your participation also of Omnia Audio for being our sponsor. OmniaAudio.com is their website. Look forward to your comments. We'll do this again next week. So we'll see you next week on This Week in Radio Tech. Bye-bye.
That's all the bandwidth we can pilfer this week. Another twort has propagated, and all the transmitters and audio equipment live happily ever after, thanks to the handsome engineer and his kind, benevolent care. We'll be back next week.
Lord willing and the creek don't rise.
This Week in Radio Tech. Subscribe to iTunes and you'll never miss a show. Search for This Week in Radio Tech in the iTunes Store. Soliciting is strictly encouraged. If you like today's show, tell a friend. If you didn't like it, we were never here. Kirk Harnack's wardrobe provided by the Salvation Army and the Red Cross Disaster Relief Services. Hair and makeup provided by Penelope Garcia Hernandez Weinberg.
He's unique, wouldn't you say?
I just want to get it over with.
This ends this transmission. Tango, Whiskey, India, Romeo, Tango. Signing off. Okay.